I'm Alana Dietze, Associate Artistic Director of the Echo Theater Company. And if you want to learn more about Underneath the Freeways of Los Angeles and the Echo, please watch this video. Well, my first theater memory is I was 6 years old and I did a junior version of Midsummer Night's Dream and played a fairy. But I think I really fell in love with theater for the first time when I was a little older and I did a program through my elementary school called Odyssey of the Mind, which was a kind of a team building creative competition. And it included both long form and short form problem solving. And my team chose a performance based problem. So we had about, I actually don't remember, it's been so long, but maybe 6 months to solve this problem that was presented to us. And it was, we had to basically write a play that fit certain parameters, that had, it was this many minutes in length and it had this type of prop and it was based on a Greek myth and it had, all these different elements that we were asked to incorporate. And I remember when we were actually at the competition performing our piece and hearing the audience laugh for the first time, laugh at this thing that we created from scratch that, at age 10 or whatever we were. And that was the first time I got that hit of like, oh, this is something I want to do. This is something that's magical. And yeah, I was sort of hooked on it since then. I can't really imagine a life without theater in it for me now. It's so part of everything that I do. Yeah. And I guess it's just, to me, it's like a culmination of so many different things that I love. I love visual beauty. I love music. I love personal connection, and all of those things are part of theater. When did it go from an interest to an obsession? Well, acting I fell in love with, I think, that very first moment that I just described when I was performing for Odyssey of the Mind. Directing came much, much later. I never expected to be a director. That was something that was really urged on me by a couple of different mentors in my life. The first was a professor of mine at college when I went to Occidental, and then the second was Chris Fields, who's the artistic director of the Echo. And I had a lot more resistance to directing. I think because I just had always loved acting and it always felt like the thing to me. And directing, I don't know, I didn't really think of myself as a leader. It felt a little bit more behind the scenes, like no one sees the result of what you've done. And then, of course, that's not true. And I think, I don't know exactly when I fell in love with directing, but I do know the first time I read a play and thought, I have to direct this. And that was Dryland. At the time, I was actually, I think I was still the only lit manager of the Echo, and which meant that I was setting up these regular readings for us to look at new plays at the company. And I'd read that play on the page and I loved it immediately. And then I remember sitting in our first just in-house reading, which is just company members only, no invited audience or anything, and hearing the play out loud. And I just felt like, oh, I have to do this. I know exactly what to do with it. And yeah, the rest is history. And that was the moment that I think I really became a director. I really owned directing. Choosing the productions at Echo is, it's a complicated process. The way that we examine plays is we have like a real kind of stringent way that we do that, which is we have a staff of, an artistic staff who is all reading plays all the time. And then whenever we get interested in something, we have an in-house reading of it, which is company members only. And we have those usually once a week. Sometimes it changes a little bit depending on what else is going on at the theater. And those readings are just to hear the play out loud for the first time. And so we cast them, but our eye is more towards just getting the right voice. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect casting. So then we have that in-house reading. After that, we have a short discussion. And then if someone on the staff gets excited about the play, then we move to do a public reading. So then we approach the playwright or their agent and ask them if we can do a public reading. And that then we really start to think about who would be right to direct this. We get more particular about casting. And those have 8 hours of rehearsal and then are performed for an audience, a non-paying audience. And that's sort of, it's not an audition for the play, but it's when we really get to see, like, does our audience respond to this? And also, what are we still, do we still want more? After hearing it out loud with a little bit of rehearsal, do we still want to see where this goes next? And do we still feel like there's more to discover there? And that's generally where we pluck our productions from. It's not always the case. Sometimes we get so excited about a play from a first reading and we just know that it's going to be hard to get, and so we pursue rights immediately. Because that's also an ingredient in this, is it's not just what we want, it's what we can get. And, you know, we've had many heartbreaks of plays that we were dying to produce that we couldn't produce because they were, you know, attached to a star, they were being done all these other places and they weren't available. And then in terms of, I think kind of there's a more meta or a bigger question that you're asking, which is, you know, how do we choose what we choose and why? Which is a little harder to answer. I think we gravitate towards straightforward, you know, narrative plays. We don't do anything that's super abstract, that have a provocative element to them. So that can mean a lot of different things. We love theatricality. We love ensembles. You know, we generally do larger cast shows than I think is typical for a small theater. Not always, but we're certainly not scared away by having a big cast on stage. And then, you know, we're also always looking towards what's the whole of the season, or even the long-term trajectory of what we're saying as a theater company. So to that end, we're looking for diversity. We're looking for, you know, not just diversity of who the playwright is, but also what's the experience that we're putting on stage? What are we reflecting back to our audience? And also, like, what messages are we sending? What are we provoking in the people that we're inviting to our space? And so we had a season lined up right before COVID hit that was really, I thought we were all really excited about, and was a really nice balance of many different things. But I think that was like a perfect example of an echo season, in that we had a show that was a period piece that had a lot of religious elements, but it was primarily about privilege and the unhoused, and but all looking at this through a lens of a young woman living in oh gosh, I can't even remember the year, it's been so long now, but she was St Clair. She ended up being St Clair. She was a disciple of St Francis of Assisi. And then we had a play that was about a young Black man living in modern-day America and his experience. And then we had a play that was about a movie set that was dealing with climate change, but it all took place on the set of a film. So again, like, all of these things were very, very different, but they had kind of a universal theatricality, and also have a message, and all have a very different tone and style as well. We consider ourselves a playwright-focused company. We are an ensemble, and so we have a lot of amazing actors that are part of our membership, but our mission is really towards serving playwrights and what they need. So, you know, that's our focus always. And, you know, and really supporting new works and empowering playwrights to their process. So the National Young Playwrights is a program where we ask for applications from all over the country, and we select a small number of those playwrights to pair with a mentor and work with them throughout the year on a new piece. And our interest primarily is in playwrights who might not have the opportunity to go to grad school, say, that are, extremely talented, but they live in a rural area or whatever it is that's keeping them from, having access to some of the more traditional venues for development and growth as writers. So we pair them with professional playwrights, usually playwrights that we already have a relationship with in some way. So maybe we've produced their work, or they're just a friend of the company and we've known them for a long time. And they work together throughout the year, and then we present the result of that mentorship as a public reading usually to an audience, but this year it was all on Zoom, of course, still to an audience, but virtually. And then the Los Angeles Playwrights is similar, except that it's focused on playwrights that are living in Los Angeles. So also younger folks, and again, they're paired with a mentor, and then their work culminates in a public reading of some kind. Those happen throughout the year, as opposed to the National Young Playwrights, which are kind of centered on a festival that's just of their work. The Playwrights Lab is sort of ever evolving, but that is intended generally for more established playwrights, and it's a space to support them in their work. And the leadership of that changes, usually yearly, sometimes less than that. So this year we have Hannah Wolf and Brian Otanya leading it. Hannah is a director and Brian's a playwright. And so they're working together, and they meet in the past it's been once a month, but I believe actually this year they're meeting twice a month. And they trade off who's sharing work at those different meetings. And they share, it depends, but usually about 10 pages at a time. The idea being that they accumulate, and that by the end of the process they'll have a full play. And then they get feedback from each other, and also the artistic staff whenever we're able to be there. And that process also culminates in a festival in which we read a bunch of their plays at once. That's the program of those that you mentioned that I've been most active in and involved in. I've not been the director of that ever, but I try to be present for it as much as possible to give feedback, but also to see what's happening, because those are playwrights that we really love and are excited about and probably know already, and we have produced shows that came out of the lab multiple times. And then the Playwright Studio classes, it's an offering that we do. Again, the teachers sometimes shift, but it's playwrights that we have relationships with that we love, and it's just a space that we provide that people can take classes, and they always change a little bit depending on who's teaching. But again, it's just another way that we try to offer a place for writers to expand and explore their work. The Truck, Mrs. Porter's, and the Designer Mentorship, those are all pretty new programs. Mrs. Porter's actually, I wouldn't classify as a program. It's something that we've done once. It was a one-night salon, and we do plan to continue it. And I didn't attend because to attend, you have to participate. So that is, you have to, the idea behind it is that every person who's in the room is sharing something. And you have a limited amount of time, and you can read a piece of writing, or you can share a piece of music that you love, and so on. So anyway, I didn't go to the first one because I didn't have anything to share, but I do hope to attend at some point, and I heard it was a great success. But it's something that they'd done in person for a very long time, and that Chris Fields, our artistic director, he'd met this woman, and she got him all excited about it, and so we decided to transfer it to our platform through Zoom. The Theater Truck is also something that's evolving, but the idea behind that is that we want to be able to bring theater to communities that maybe wouldn't see theater otherwise, wouldn't seek it out, or just don't have access. And so that's led by a company member named Riel Paley. And so far, what we've done a few times is done sort of outdoor storytelling for kids. And the actors that are involved have gotten together and they've sort of developed these different ways to engage young audiences. And then we go and do them in a public place, a park usually, or sometimes someone's front yard, and do some outreach into the community to let them know that, hey, this is happening, we'd love for you to be there. That's mostly happened during COVID, so we've been pretty limited about how we're inviting people because we don't want a huge crowd, and want everything to be distanced and safe. But I think it will continue to evolve. They have a lot of different ideas about what that could be. They've started working on Shakespeare. They've also done a number of exercises based on Boyle together, and I know that that's an interest of a number of the people that are involved. So it remains to be seen what exactly that will be, but I'm really excited about it. I think it could be really interesting and kind of a very different thing than what we usually do in our theater space. The design mentorship program, that's brand new. It's something that came out of a lot of the conversations that we were having over the summer after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and we were having a lot of conversations within the company about how we can be more actively anti-racist in our theater work. And something that came up was that the BIPOC folks are generally very underrepresented in design worlds in theater. So we talked about what can we do to actively combat that, and came up with this idea that, we have a number of designers that are resident designers in the company that we love, that are company members, and they work with us all the time, and they were really excited about mentoring young folks that are interested in learning the trade. So the idea we came up with was that we would have one resident designer in each field. So a costume designer, a scenic designer, lighting, and sound. And they would be kind of apprentices for the entire year with the company. So they would assist the lead designer on all of the main stage shows. And then we also do we sometimes have off-night shows, and that would be an opportunity for them to be lead designers. And we also do once a year for our associate company, we have a night of one acts, and that they would be the lead designers for those as well. So it's a chance to get really hands-on experience and also learn from someone who's working in the field and very established. So Underneath the Freeways was actually a commission. With COVID and everything being shut down, we talked a lot about what we wanted to do in this time. And I initially had a lot of resistance to producing anything online. I just feel like it's not the theater experience that we're all used to. It's not something we're specialized in any way. We didn't really have anybody on the staff who knows how to manipulate it in a way that I feel like could be effective. But, as this has stretched on and on, we wanted to think about creative ways that we could still provide content for our audience. And Chris came up with this idea, Chris Fields came up with this idea that he wanted to do a murder mystery. And so we started talking about who we thought would be right for that. And Matthew Paul Olmos was a member of our lab a couple years ago, and we've always been really big fans of his writing. And we thought that his particular style and tone would be right for that kind of project. So we approached him and commissioned him to write this piece. And we said early on that we really wanted it to be interactive. That was kind of the most important thing, was that we didn't want people just sitting and watching another Zoom reading. So that was how he approached it. And that the way that that's evolved has changed as we've gone, and as we've experimented with actors and with actually having audience. That we haven't had an actual audience yet. We've had a sort of a test run where we had people come so that we could practice just moving them around Zoom and see how that works. And yeah, Matthew, I thought he came up with an amazing idea. He actually presented a number of ideas to us, and they were all really exciting. So we kind of went back to him and said, well, which one do you most want to write? And he felt really strongly about this idea of writing something that was set in Boyle Heights in 1960, which is when the Los Angeles freeways were being expanded and the East L.A. interchange was being built, and about 15,000 people were displaced out of the community as a result of that. And we thought that was really exciting. We love the idea of having this, like, a political backdrop to a murder mystery and seeing what came out of that. So it'll be really interesting to see. We're really excited to have audience starting this week and see what comes out of it. The thing that excites me the most is that while the play only has one result, really, the conversation can go any number of ways. So depending on who's in the audience, what comes out of their experience and what they discuss and what direction the show is led as it goes will really change depending on what the audience thinks and what they're interested in. So underneath the freeways, the first thing that happens is you meet a kind of a narrator character named Ellie, who is the guide for this process. So when you first come into the room, the audience is hidden, and she sort of explains what's going to happen and tells you what you need to do, and gives the overview of what's going down. And then what happens is the audience gets split into breakout rooms, into groups, with one of the actors. And they've also received a number of materials ahead of time, we call the onboarding materials, that sort of give them a sense of what this mystery is, what the murder is, what the crime is that's occurred, and also what their role is. So the idea is that they're members of the community and they have an investment in figuring out exactly what happened. And we also send them a document that we're calling our interrogation sheets, which gives just a little hint about each person that they're going to meet, each person of interest, and also has space for them to take notes and gives kind of prompt questions about things that they might want to find out about from each actor. So, I mean, it's pretty basic stuff like who, what, when, where, why. But then we also give little specifics about each character that they're going to meet to help guide them. So then in each breakout room, they hear from each actor, and they also are able to guide that conversation based on what they want to know. So the character might tell them one thing, and then they look at their sheet and they see, oh yeah, I see that you have a son. You haven't mentioned him. What was your son doing during this time? And then they have a limited amount of time with each person, and they travel. The audience stays, but the actors travel through the room so the audience meets each character. And then after they've met everybody and had a chance to question them, everybody comes back together in the main space. And then Ellie, the guide that they met at the beginning, leads them through a conversation about what they learned and what they think might have happened. And then they have an opportunity to revisit a few of the people that they've met. So they choose as an audience who they want to hear more from. And we hear, and then we get a little more information from those people that they're most interested in. And then it culminates in a reveal of what actually occurred. The director is Michael Alvarez, who was someone that we had hired at the Echo once before. He directed a public reading, and Chris just felt strongly that he'd be the right person for this. So we had a conversation with him. We sent him the script. He loved it, and he and Matthew really connected. And so that's who's directing it. And he's also has a strong background in immersive theater, which we thought would be really right for this. It's not exactly an immersive piece. There is, because of the interactive qualities of it, he's had that experience of figuring out how to get the audience to engage and also to make sure that they're on board with what's happening and really clear about what their role is in this world. The cast is amazing. It's a mix of Echo members, friends of the Echo, and then a couple people that we never met before that came through recommendations. A couple from Michael, the director, one from a company member that just happened to be, she just worked on a short film that she was in. And yeah, they're all wonderful. It's a really great group, and can't wait to see what they do. Honestly, I mostly just hope they have a good time. I think we're all deprived of fun and pleasure right now, so I really would just want it to be a fun experience for people. But I also hope that it provokes some thought about displacement and community, and also especially for those that are actually from Los Angeles, how the city's structure itself has contributed to some of the disparity and inequality that we still see today. There was a great article in the LA Times earlier this year that was, I think the headline was something like, if you want to talk about tearing down monuments of racism, let's tear down the Los Angeles freeways. And that's kind of the premise of the show. Not to say that we're saying that we should tear down the freeways, but just that there's more behind every decision that's been made in this city than maybe initially meets the eye, and there's ripple effects that we're still seeing the results of today as a result of that. So I hope that it'll provoke some thought about that, and you know, especially for those that live here, thinking about how their communities came to be the way that they are, and how they might be different if certain things changed, and you know, what losses we've had as a result of these systemic structures that have been put in place. Particularly in, you know, with Boyle Heights specifically, and this is something that's in the play, it was a very integrated, diverse community before the freeway was built. And now it's lost a lot of that. And I imagine that's probably true other places as well. I think viewers should attend Underneath the Freeways of Los Angeles because it gives them an opportunity to have a really engaged experience of history, especially for Los Angeles residents, but really anywhere. You're getting a kind of niche inside view of what it was like to be in this community at the time, and you're really, the way we've structured it, you're really accepted as a member of that community, which I think allows for a different way of thinking about that history in particular. And it should be really fun. It's my belief that the job of the theater is to reflect the human experience. When it's at its best, I think we learn something about both ourselves and our community and the world as a whole when you see a piece of theater that is really effective and doing what it's supposed to do. To me, it's almost a godlike experience. It feels transcendental when I see something that helps me understand my place in the world in a larger way. So I guess I would say that for people, it's tricky because theater's not a universal. You know, not everybody feels like that they need theater. And I understand that too. Like I don't know that everybody does need theater, but I know that I do, and I know that most of the people in my life do, by virtue of the fact that most people in my life are theater people, and that's my church. Like that's the space in which I feel like I can transcend my own personal small worlds and feel connected to a larger whole. And I think theaters that are doing their job and are really thinking about kind of bigger questions in the world have that power. They have that ability to help people see something that's outside of themselves and feel a little less alone and feel connected to a community and feel connected to people that might have a completely different experience than them through, you know, the universal, through the things that make us all human. Los Angeles has so many wonderful theaters, and there are so many wonderful theaters in the world, and they're all doing something a little bit different. And so the Echo might be the place for you, or it might not. I want the playwrights and the directors and the actors who feel drawn to us to come to us, you know, and that has to do with what we're putting out into the world. And if that speaks to you, then we want to hear from you, and we want you to come around. I guess it's a little easier for me to speak to playwrights in the sense that playwrights are usually the ones that we're scrambling after. Sometimes directors too. But the people that we're most excited to bring into the fold are the writers that are doing things that we haven't seen before, that are writing from their hearts and souls and thinking about the world in big ways that excite us, and have humor and heart and all those things. And we hope that you'll let us do your plays because we care about you and we want to do the best that we can to make your words, reach the world. I'm Alana Dietze. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of the Echo Theater Company, and if you enjoyed this conversation about the Echo and Underneath the Freeways of Los Angeles, please come to echotheatercompany.com and explore the many offerings we have there.